And now, the thrilling conclusion.
You know what? They do a really good job of like, it's not like a CW show where they're just like checking boxes to kind of like, oh, we need to be inclusive. We need to be inclusive. At this point, they're like, we're just alive and we're grateful to be alive. So they never comment on race. They never comment on sexuality. None of that matters because they're like, well, we're alive and other people aren't. And that's the most important part. So the characters have like baked in importance by being not dead.
Well, it reminded me of, honestly, a Sanderson book. Like, he acknowledges that sexuality exists.
He acknowledges.
And that's it.
Yeah.
Like in Mistborn, the second book, I believe, like Vin gets out of her tent and she like looks back and...
Aren't she and Elend already married at that point?
Yeah, but they're in the tent because they're like camping. And she gets out of the tent and she looks back and Elend is in there. And that's like the whole comment. Whereas they kind of do something exactly the same in this show, where Kirsten is in the tent. She wakes up. She she doesn't even look over. It's just like an out of focus person.
Well, because they have that excellent line where a character who I thought would be a bigger deal, like the main minstrel guy, the guy who played the mandolin.
Yeah.
Like he's sitting there, and all of a sudden this woman's like, "So who's sleeping in your tent these days?" He's like, "No one," and she's like, and he's like,
I thought he was the director.
I did too, but he wasn't.
Because Sarah is now, I think.
No, she was the conductor.
Who the hell was the director?
David Cross, who
was
left,
the original
and they
director, yeah.
never replaced him. I'm like, it's been like several years you've been saying.
Oh, it's an even year. You must be doing a comedy. We could use some levity. What are you doing? Hamlet.
No, they weren't doing Hamlet. Oh yeah, was it Hamlet they did? Okay.
He's like, we agreed never to do Hamlet. And she goes, you said you'd never do Hamlet.
It's like,
and he goes, what are you scoring it with? Tub thumping?
Yeah. All right, so man, we're at 37 minutes of talking about this show, and I guarantee you we have another hour in us.
We haven't made any points yet.
It's hard to make points about a show that actually doesn't end with any big revelation, except for the fact that life goes on.
Right.
Yeah, and it should. And
well, I mean, so if we want to talk about the whole show, what it's about is trauma.
It is, and acceptance.
Yes, and acceptance. Miranda, her whole thing is trauma.
Mm-hmm.
When he first meets her, she's drawing. Well, she's drawing the doctor, but like one of the things that she's always drawing is a hurricane. She's constantly drawing a hurricane because
her family died in the hurricane.
In Hurricane Hugo, yes, and
I gotta say, actually, the every time they shoehorned in the spaceman costume, I was like, not necessary.
But at the same time, because at the beginning I was like, what the hell do they mean? It wasn't necessary.
It was in the background of a bunch of scenes early on, and I'm like...
Miranda's was a little necessary.
When she opens the door and the spaceman walks in, okay, that is necessary. I mean,
it's the cut at the end of episode 1. But let's talk about the theme of trauma real quick. So Miranda is very traumatized by this.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And she's drawing this graphic novel.
It's essentially art therapy.
Yeah, and she's drawing it about this guy whose his first line is, I remember damage, and then escape, And that's exactly what she must remember is the damage and then herself escaping. I mean, that's what
lives, yeah.
That's what Kirsten would know. She remembers the damage of Arthur dying and then escaping with Jeevan,
Jeevan's such a great character.
Jeevan is interesting, but let's get to him later, and let's talk about the trauma still a little more. And so, like, all these, Tyler, he has the trauma of his dad not caring and getting damaged by that, and then escaping to Germany. In a way, they're all escaping. Like, Emily's escaping, Clark is escaping.
Tyler is the first person to show optimism in a new world by bringing that guy in. And what do? They kill the hope of the future. So he watches quite literally and ham-fisted, but still awesome. He watches the old guard shoot the hope of the future right in the face.
Not the hope of the future, but
it was.
No,
it was a little bit.
I just want to go over all the characters' traumas.
Well, because remember, he was talking about like we can sustain more people than we have. We can open everything and we can be a beacon kind of deal. And so he's like, look at this guy. He must be immune. They just dome him. And I was like, oh my God. Kid's covered in the blood of the man he tried to save. It's pretty awesome.
Oh, that's not where I was going with anything.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And then we have Frank, whose trauma is getting blown up and then escaping. Like
and
he
then
remembers
drugs.
Escape. Well, that would be
heroin,
part of his escape. But I mean, like he remembers escaping into Singapore. That's where they brought him after Sri Lanka. and then he escapes with the drugs.
He escapes into the drugs.
And so all these characters have this massive trauma and escape, except for Jeevan. And I think that's one of the reasons why Jeevan doesn't, and Emily doesn't, I don't think. What's her name? Elizabeth.
Elizabeth.
So,
Well, her trauma would be
well, she never had this massive
unloving
trauma. All these
husband,
other
I
characters,
guess.
all these other characters had massive trauma, whereas Elizabeth and Jeevan don't, and they're the only two main characters that don't give a fuck about Station 11. When Frank gets his copy of the book, or when Kirsten is with Frank, and she gives him the book, and she's like, "What do you like about it?" And he's like, "I loved it." He said specifically that he loves it, and she goes,
Yep.
"Who's your favorite character?" And he goes, "All of them."
all of them. Yeah.
And when they're doing the play, and he's looking at Jeevan, and Jeevan doesn't understand. He doesn't understand the play. He doesn't understand the novel. When he's crawling through the snow, and like he's desperate, and he's just trying to find something to distract him from this horrific pain, he opens up the book and he starts reading through it, and he goes,
Pretentious.
"So pretentious."
I gotta say, that part where he's bleeding out in the snow, I loved that he reaches into his pack and pulls out the thermal, like the thermal blanket. I was like, of course, at this point, why wouldn't he? But yeah, no.
But I mean, and then
That's a good
he
point,
experiences trauma then, and then he remembers Escape, where he escapes into this role of being a doctor. All of these characters and all the traveling troupe escape from their trauma into being in the troupe. They're escaping the world by being in this thing. So all of these characters have met damage, and they've all met escape. Clark escapes into his own bubble. He creates a bubble where he escapes from the world and seals himself off for 20 years. So I don't know if this is intended. I don't know if I'm imagining
it's 100% intended, because you can't have that set up, because the whole thing has to come full circle to Hamlet. You got Tyler, his uncle, his mom, and like they're kind of like and so
So are they all connected to Arthur, or are they all connected to trauma?
they're all connected to trauma.
Right.
But the jump start of the trauma was the death of Arthur, for sure. That's what set everybody on their paths and made them collide, and then it just so happened, massive global pandemic.
And escape and everything.
And escape, yeah. No, it's like I said, it's a show that for better or worse, I was glued to it, but it's a hard show to recommend because it is not straightforward. It is not necessarily well-defined parameters, as you and I have just kind of discussed. You kind of got to unpack a lot of it.
You know, the responses that I'm seeing, I haven't dealt with trauma like they've dealt with, right? Like
nobody.
You can't imagine that level of trauma. That
One
level
in
of
1,000 deaths around you. I mean, that's gonna
probably more, because people that, like, if you watch The Stand,
the,
you can, like, of the survivors. If you watch The Stand, if you read The Stand,
There it is.
Of the survivors, like in the extended edition, he's just talking about like dozens of people who are just dying of stuff. Like someone finds, like a junkie finds a stash of drugs, they take all of it and die. This guy is like trying to like sort through this house, and he gets stuck behind like this is a fake example. He gets stuck behind a wardrobe and dies. You know, all these people are dying from random little things. All these people dying of starvation would be. All these people who just, wouldn't get. Yeah. So 1 in 1,000, maybe.
From the virus alone would be 1 in 1,000. Much higher when you take into account things like a small infection, you have no antibiotics.
But I do think that the main theme of trauma is really important, because I really resonated with the story, because I felt so many of the things that they feel in that story.
Part of me wonders though if you had done it in a more chronological order. For me personally, I think a lot. I don't know. There parts of it I liked that I saw out of sequence, but there were other parts where it's like I could have liked a little more narrative structure.
I struggled with that a lot.
Yeah.
Because I think I texted you. I'm like, I was up till 2 a.m. I watched 6 episodes of the show, and I don't know if I like it, but I'm gonna watch the rest today.
Yeah. No. It's definitely an interesting show, and like I said, I don't know if I would recommend it to people. I know I don't regret watching it, and I guess that's probably the biggest recommendation I can give is I don't think my time was wasted. But man, there were so many things that I would love to fix about it.
Well, there are so many things that.
But I guess.
But in the story at the beginning, what do they say when they're talking about going town to town? They specifically say, like, if you stay around, they end up blaming you. But if you go in and you leave them wanting more,
They'll accept you next time.
then
you
they
come around.
love you.
Yeah.
Then they'll talk about you all year. And I mean, like, I think that the writer was metaing pretty hard in this. I think that he was deliberately talking to the audience fairly frequently.
Well, I heard the book is written in the same format the show was produced, with like the jumping back and forth.
I was hoping you actually read the book so we could talk about that.
No, after I watched the show, I know I said I was going to read it. It's only 300 pages. I mean, that's like a 2-day read.
Yeah.
But I just didn't want to. After I saw the show, I'm like, I don't think I'm going to get any new information. You know what I mean? I don't know if I'll like it more or less after reading the book.
I think it has to be drastically different.
The show must take liberties. There's no way the book. Yeah, there's no way. There's no way.
But no, I do want to. They talk to the audience a lot. They talk about that with like you leaving you more. It's a limited series. I think they're deliberately talking about that.
I gotta say, it does have one of the better endings that I've seen in a long time.
One
in terms
person
of resolution.
online,
Yeah.
the negative reviews was like, "What's with this hopeful crap in like apocalypse?
That's the whole point.
Like life goes on. You can't
Life goes
You
on.
can't have this dreary thing where people are going around for years and years, and they're like struggling to eat, but they're still fine. And every now and then they find a perfect Kia Sorento
Yeah, like no, the idea
with
that
gasoline that still works, and then they drive from like Georgia to like fucking Tennessee. Fuck you, Walking Dead.
well, especially with Kristen, like the whole point was she was yelling at people who had the option of closure, and she never thought she would get closure. She never thought she would have that ability to ever see or speak to Jeevan again. And as a matter of fact, the first time she meets the troop, one of the first questions asked is like, "What would you do?" And she's like, "I would give Frank and Jeevan proper burial, and Arthur proper burials," right? Because she was like, I need to say goodbye to them because they're dead now. And then when she gets to see Jeevan at the end and she just gets to walk with him, and he's like, my kids know all your stories.
I liked how subtle it was. I liked that ending. I like that we didn't see the big emotional thing because we just see them leaving and
I'll
saying
see
goodbye.
you next year. I'll see you next year.
We didn't.
Oh, I got
need-
goosebumps. It's like, it's so, I
Same.
know it's so.
Dude, you can see them.
I know, right? Oh, yeah, no, it's
But
such
no,
a
you
good
can,
ending, and it was because they.
But that's
put,
why I didn't need the emotional Jeevan and her scene, right? I didn't need that crazy scene.
I understand that,
because
but-
they pay off in the end with, like, we know that they care about each other. We know that they're devastated by leaving each other. We know that they're traumatized by having left each other.
I just for me, like I said, from the point of view, her turns and see Jeevan as me, the audience member, who's like, oh my God, he's alive?
Yeah.
Where the hell has he been?
Yeah.
And then we get to see how hard he worked to try and fight his way. I mean, there's not a wrong way to tell the story. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
it's such a great arc, but I really personally I would have loved a little bit of that shock when she turns, because first of all, it is filmed masterfully because she turns and everything's very kind of like blurry, and then everything focuses on Jeevan. And it's like, at first I was like, what am I like, it's so, the cinematography is great. It's just such a, parts are so good. I don't like Mackenzie Davis, I guess, is what it comes down to. She always looks
crazy.
she always looks like she's smelling cat urine. Like,
I didn't have any problems with her. But that's funny.
I just
I
don't-
usually notice if I don't like an actor.
look,
I notice immediately if I don't like an actor, in fact.
like I said, I have nothing against her. I just don't think she had. I think she was literally outacted and outcast by everyone around her. They did more with less than she did with all she was given.
Maybe she didn't need to do that much, though, because even though she's the main character, she's not the main story.
All right, that's true. Yeah, she's kind of our. She's what do they call it in the Wheel of Time? Taveran.
Taveran, yeah.
Yeah. So, oh man, yeah. So I mean, oh god, we're at 50 minutes.
It doesn't matter because literally 40 minutes of what we shot should be cut, probably.
No, I think there's a lot of good stuff here.
But you're gonna have to edit like a motherfucker.
It's a lot easier now than it was in the first
Lots of
week. I mean, I'm learning the techniques a little bit more, but yeah, you know what I can do is I can just throw in like clips from the show to like cover the edits. But yeah, man, this is one of those shows where I'm having a hard
It
time.
sounds like it left you wanting more.
I don't think I wanted more.
But left you wanted more of the, I don't know.
I just think I would have liked it. You know what it is? It's I would have liked it to like just be a little tighter. Like I have nothing. I like it. I don't love it, and I desperately wanted to love it. You know what I mean? It was like just tighten it up a little bit. Maybe take this out. Maybe replace this. You know, and then it just it's such a hard show to talk about because everybody's going to have a different takeaway, and the way it's structured.
Well, I took from
you and I have different takeaways, and I mean, like
I
it's
took
just,
away from the trauma aspect of it, and you took away from the character pieces.
That's what and it's wild that the show does all that, and like neither one of us is like, but they did a bad job at it.
Yeah.
Like I said, my biggest complaint is probably the main actress. I thought she was just outclassed by everybody else. And I get she's supposed to be a maladjusted, like 30-year-old
feral child,
but like
actor turned feral child turned actor.
yeah, actor turned feral turned actor. Yeah, no, it's just I don't know. It's just it's a wild show. So I guess at the end of the day, if you want to watch it, I will not tell you to skip it. But if you're like, maybe I'll skip this, I also won't tell you to watch it.
Let's talk about some of the great moments in the show.
Like what? I think we already did.
Well, we didn't mention so many of them because there's so many of them. I loved Jeevan's trip into the grocery store. The little trip through the grocery store where he's like,
Where he spends 10 grand.
yeah, well,
And the guy's like, should I go home?
You know,
He's
he'd
like,
been on the phone with his sister,
yeah.
and she's like, remember when you drank strawberry yoo-hoo and you puked? And he's just like,
throws a bunch of it in the cart.
yeah, he's like, have you ever had, he's just, his ears are ringing. He's like, have you ever had yoo-hoo?
Well, because that's what he said. He's like, I just had the panic attack earlier. This is normally where I'd have one, but I already did. So I guess I got to move forward.
Yeah, and then he gets to the cash register and he's paying 10 grand and you know, he writes
Because
a
money's
check.
not going to matter.
He
Can I
writes
write a check? And
the
they're like,
guy's
no.
And then he pays with his card and it dings. He's like, I knew that would go through.
Yeah.
And the cashier's just like, what do I, he doesn't ask, where do I go? He asks, what do I do?
No, he's like, should I go home? I think is
he
what
doesn't.
he asks.
He asks, what do I do?
Oh, and he goes, go home. And
Yeah.
he does. Yeah.
I wouldn't have sent him home. I'd have been like, barricade this place, man. Like, barricade yourself with the food.
Yeah.
Well, no,
It's not the point. The point of the show is not. The point
Yeah.
of the show is not like a
the post-apocalyptic savior
right.
show.
As you have so clearly discussed, it is
then-
more stages of grief and trauma and.
It's 100% trauma.
Yeah.
Like that's what connects all the characters.
Yeah,
And,
it's interesting. It's interesting.
Do you find it weird? So I was thinking maybe her. So I was thinking her brother might have been named Frank too, because at one point she says something.
About her
but-
having a dead brother?
She says, "And my little Jeevan and my little brother Frank," or she says, "My parents and my little brher Frank." And
Oh, was it little brother or was it a brother?
she
No,
said
I thought it was
she
a brother.
Said,
Was
she
it a brother?
said little brother.
Oh, I
but
thought-
then later she says that she had a brother who died before she was born.
I was going to say, I thought it was a predeceased.
So she was just confused, and she thought of Frank as her.
Unreliable, yeah.
Well, she thought of Frank as her little brother.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Frank's death was good.
She never saw his corpse.
Never saw his corpse. I know some people are going to watch that episode. It's like, how'd she find her way back there? It's like, she imagined it. It was a fever dream that she found him dead in the bed.
Coco 1 or whatever they invented.
Yeah. Like, no, it's like, no. She never went back. She's never gone back.
Well, she was at the door in the dream.
Yeah, but that's
young one was
death's
at the
door. That's death's door she's at.
No.
Right?
Frank was in the bed, and her
Oh.
her child self was in the door,
And then the grown-up self is on the other side because,
like keeping the door shut.
yeah, it's like, kid, don't come in here kind of deal. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it was, I guess I'm leaning into watch it territory the more we talk about it, but also just understand that it's not for everyone. I don't know I really don't know how to score this. Like, there's a lot I enjoyed about it. I really thought them being minstrels was going to play a bigger factor in it, but it turns out them being actors is the bigger part of it. And like I said, the soundtrack, it's so jarring because the first time they're all sitting there around the campfire playing songs, I'm like, well, this is beautiful. And that's where she goes and stabs Tyler. But it's like
The dirge, right?
yeah, the funeral dirge. Oh man. But like even when they're just sitting there like in the main guy's playing the mandolin, I was like, this guy's gonna be a much bigger part of the show. He's not. He gets like few things. And then also like Kirsten, when she shows up at the airport and she's like, we need to get out of here. And they're like, why? They have food, water, shelter.
Oh, I thought this was gonna be like a Fallout situation, especially when they had like the
Like a New Vegas kind
electronics.
of thing.
I thought it was gonna be Fallout, where it was like we are collecting people, like.
But they weren't.
No, they were just normal people.
They were,
in the,
and then like, and again, it's another thing with Clark refusing to let go of the past, and everybody else being like, it's not that big of a deal. And he's like, I think it is. But that's all he knew, too, by the way.
Well,
he was a man
scene-
who was constantly living in the past.
He's a complicated character because, I mean, like every time we see him emotional, even pre-pandemic, every time we see him emotional, he's a piece of shit.
Oh, he lashes out at everybody around him.
And then
Nothing's
and then
ever
we
his
see
fault.
We see him try to like take control in the airport, and he does it in a manipulative way. He's not experiencing any emotions when he does that. So is he as manipulative as Arthur?
I know everybody was saying, I know the whole point is that Arthur manipulated people around him, but I think Arthur did it coincidentally, accidentally. I think he.
Well, that was the point. He actually says that.
Yeah, Arthur moved in good faith.
And he says, and Tyler's like him, but he doesn't. He's not good.
That part where he's talking to him, he's like, Tyler has to go, and it's like, how much power have you put in this kid? Like, but again, that's his
A lot.
attachment to the old world,
It's because his attachment to Arthur and his resentment
and he
to Arthur.
needs to get rid of that. So yeah,
Because
no.
he specifically, when he talks about Arthur, and then at the end he says, "I love him." It's like you did not describe a person you love.
No. It is, man. Yeah, Clark is.
But is he as manipulative?
Well, he is very manipulative.
Okay, I was gonna say.
Because that's what he does. But is he acting as a bad faith? Is he acting in bad faith? I don't think so. I think he's doing what he, maybe a little bit. I think
No,
he's.
I do think he's doing what he thinks is right, but I'm just saying.
but
that
also he's not going to acquiesce power. Like he's not, or like whatever.
Well, like I
he's not
said,
gonna
every
give
time
it
he's
up.
emotional, we can see his true side. And like when he's that scene where he's talking to the nurses or the nuns, the support group, whatever support group, maybe that's an AA.
I think
I
it
got
was.
the impression that
it was
an
an
AA.
AA group, as far as I could tell.
And he's like, every time in my life I've walked into a room, I've known that every single person in that room hates me. Every single person. And maybe he says, I felt. He's like,
I felt that, or something like
and he
that.
goes,
yeah.
and I know it's not true, but I still feel it. But then he walks into the room with kids, right in like it's juxtaposed his
Yeah.
speech. We're walking into the room with kids, and they're all like,
exactly.
they all don't like
Who's
him.
old
And it's
man
like,
Clark?
it's like, so is it just a feeling, or do people like really? Has everyone his whole life hated him? And I kind of get the impression that, in general, they have.
I think the reason why the young people had a hard time with Clark is for the same reason that Tyler had a hard time with Clark, is that he's like, there's a whole world out there. I don't think we need to just stay locked up. I think the flu is dead. I think there's a world out there for all of us, and I think we can do better. And then Tyler, of course, warps it into, well, I should just kill everyone.
Well,
No more olds. No more olds. No more olds.
Well, he wanted to kill the past. He didn't want to kill the post or the.
But there is no
prequels.
past.
And that's why he wanted to kill it.
Yeah. Well, but also you can't have. He's got to have the antagonistic part with Claudius Clark, and then his mom, because otherwise the Hamlet motif falls flat.
Well, I do like how Clark was like introducing things to the kids, and he's like, "This is a karaoke machine. It plays music." They're like, "The minstrels do that," and he's like, "Yes, but the kids go out on Friday nights and they sing songs to this." And then he goes to play it, and it starts playing Smash Mouth.
Yeah. Well, I like because then Elizabeth gets on the thing and she's like, what was the girl's name? Alex, maybe?
Yeah.
He's like, hey, Alex, I got something you're really going to dig. And then it cuts to her singing, what was it? And you say, you only say what you want to, by Lisa Loeb. Stay. There it is. And she's just singing there, and but it's in like the airplane walkway, and she's just standing on it like it's a stage singing karaoke. Oh, so good. Visually, the show is very smart. I have no problems with the way it was filmed, shot, or every location I could tell where it was, when it was, kind of deal. And
I think Frank was my favorite character.
Frank was the best character because he starts. Well, I mean, it's one of those things. It's like that old trope where it's like somebody who's, I don't want any part of this, and then softens to it. It's an easy trope, but when it's done well, it's done well.
But his soften was like one day in.
No, it was like a week.
Maybe.
Oh no, it was 2 days.
I think he's the one that tells Jeevan he has to go to the kid. Like,
Oh
we have to
yeah.
take
No,
care of
you're
this
right
kid.
because she's trying to like update her phone, and he talks to him in Hindi, and is like she's realizing her parents are dead, and I was like, oh my god. Yeah. No. The more we're talking about, the more I'm leaning into do watch it, but realize parts of it kind of suck. Like I said,
Oh, one other thing I wanted to talk about. Jeevan.
I love Jeevan.
Like, you watch these shows and you expect the Joel. You expect the reluctant hero.
Yes.
And he was never the
Joel
hero.
from The Last of Us, for those of you who don't know and are still sticking around at this point, because despite my best editing, this is still going to be like 45 minutes.
And trash. No, so you expect
We're
him.
trash. The content's good.
So you expect him to be Joel, where he's, finding his path and ends up being the father. He's a reluctant father figure.
Well, Joel,
Reluctant hero / father figure.
Joel was already a father figure. He just was reluctant to do it again because he knows what he could lose.
Right.
Jeevan had no concept.
But you expect Jeevan to be that, and you expect him, you expect that she's looking for him because he was this constant in her life. He was this driving force, and then you get the flashbacks, and that was never true.
Oh, and you know what? And she never buys into him as like that force either. She
Right.
you can see her looking at him being like, this he's not got it together.
Right. Well,
It's why
he'd been talking to himself since.
Talking to his dead sister.
Right.
And then, after Frank, he really snaps.
Yeah.
We had to stay one more day because of your play. I was like, oh my God, like it's not her fault.
I think that
You're
they
the guy who
They were together less than a year, though.
Yeah, it had been well, it was less than a year, but it's over. I think it's just over a year
I
when they're in
believe
the
so, yes.
house. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I think that's the beginning of the next winter.
Yeah, and then he's like, we can't stay here. And she's like, yes, we can. We got everything we need. And he's like, I need grown-ups. I need grown-ups. And she's like, that's selfish. Like,
Yeah. But no, he never turns into that father figure. He never turns into that hero. Like, even when he gets to the birthing center and he wants to leave, even after he's done wanting to leave because he knows he has no more foot.
well, and then he goes and lives with that woman, which, oh man, that whole episode about like what brought him to the modern day. I think that's the best episode of the show. Yeah. Followed very closely by the airport episode. I just didn't like the last 15 minutes of the airport episode.
I really liked the Miranda episode.
Miranda is I don't want to. The Miranda character to me is interesting, in so much as that she was. I don't know, like
She was really aloof.
Yeah, I liked her kind of like disconnect for everything. Like she's kind of like the clear lens, like that sees through all the bullshit.
Yeah.
But the thing I don't like was when she called the airline pilot and says, "Don't let them
That wasn't
leave."
part of her episode.
No, but she does it later. I'm talking about the character in general, not the episode.
Okay.
But later on, it's revealed she calls the airline pilot and is like, "Don't let them leave. You'll kill all those people inside."
Well, she would have access to the FAA thing. And
No, the other guy did. Her business partner had access
Sea and
to
Air
it.
Unite. He was Air.
He was the air, and it just. I didn't think it was necessary. Like, she's a big enough role, but then again, it plays into the theme that everything's fated.
Kind of. No, and then the other thing
They're all
is,
Tavaren.
all of those people on that plane, they all had to have made the decision not to leave.
Right,
The
because
pilot couldn't have stopped them.
there's no. That's the whole point about those
Yeah.
escape doors. Like,
Yeah.
you cannot open. Like, you cannot stop those doors from being open.
So when they were like, everyone on that plane is a hero, I was like, bullshit. And then it's like, oh no, they all chose. Every single one of them chose to stay on there.
And I think that's why I was so upset when she calls the pilot, because I was like, it takes a.
He wouldn't have known about the flu or something.
It takes. Well, he did know. And remember, his name was Hugo, named after the hurricane. Like I said, predestination, fate. But I think it took away from the fact that we knew there was a bunch of people making a selfless sacrifice, and them doing it just because they knew, and us not having to be a
also
part
could
of
have
it.
known people were in the airport.
Oh, they knew. You ever seen an empty airport? What is it, the
In
Langoliers?
Severin, Michigan?
Langoliers?
You ever seen an empty airport in Severin, Michigan?
No. I've never been to an airport in Severin.
I don't think anyone has.
You're gonna lose your airport in Severin, Airport City. Like, there's just.
No, but I really liked her episode because it was just.
Man,
You keep talking about something that's not in her episode. You
Yeah.
fucking suck.
but it doesn't matter because it's part of the overall arc. So I mean,
It's
like,
not part of her episode.
individual episodes are fine, but
You
they
say
need to
you
play
don't like
into
15 minutes of the airport one, but you're still saying it's a great episode. And now I'm talking about Miranda's episode, and you're bringing up shit that's not even in that episode.
Yeah, but that's a good point. But it's also, they're so closely interlaced, though. You can't talk about one without the other.
It doesn't matter if she called the airplane or not. That's not her character.
Well, it is her character. Her character called the airplane.
Yeah, but it doesn't have to do with her character. It's just an action that she's taking.
Well, no, because she talks to Clark and finds out that Arthur's son is there. And that's why she calls, because she doesn't want Arthur's son to die.
Well, she wouldn't have done it even if it was Clark.
No, I don't know. I guess we'll never know.
Yeah.
because those events didn't unfold that way.
But
I think it must have been that bean I had for dinner.
just a hobo eating half a bean.
Like the
There
cartoon.
are things I always find funny, like a hobo eating half a bean. No, but her episode where it goes from like, you know, you meet her, like she is disconnected, she is aloof, but like you see all the emotions through that she has with Arthur.
Oh no, she was an emotional character. She just, you know, tamped it down.
Right, it was aloof. It wasn't disconnected really. It was just.
There's a little disconnect by the end.
But she By the way, your pool house is on fire. No, he doesn't do that. She just walks away, and he's just like, whatever.
Stands up, and then he stands up so casually, but then they do that quick cut. And
Well, he stands up, he turns around, and he's like
Yeah.
watching her, and then he's like, ah.
And then you see him run to the pool house all of a sudden. It's like, where was that urgency when she just told you?
He didn't think she was serious.
Oh, no, she was.
Well, he didn't think she would actually burn all her work. Like, who would do that?
And then she had to restart.
And she did it.
And she did. And she finished it.
No, but I don't know.
that
Her
work?
going to the hotel, the Robespierre, her telling Leon that she made it.
Oh, I loved when she lied to him so he could die happy.
Yeah.
Because, oh, man, that was good.
And then her telling her conversations with Jonas from Veep.
Yeah, exactly.
Just like he's like,
He's like,
oh,
I'm
the
gonna-
world's ending. The world's ending, Jonas. So you should go do something. He's like,
This thing will be over by 4. I'm gonna go play golf. And then he's like, I played golf because I thought that's what a fucking person did. Like, he's like, I don't know what's happening. I'm scared out of my mind.
yeah, like
And was
I thought that's what a person would do.
I thought that's what a person would do. It's so. And then we have a person riding a horse through a minefield. Like, it's like the show is.
They clearly didn't have that many minds.
No, well, they established that it turns out most of the mines had already been picked up. But it still is narratively jarring.
I mean, it was supposed to be jarring when you realize they walked halfway through. I was expecting someone to blow up, but at the same time, they don't have that many mines. I mean, like they were all foot trigger mines.
Yeah.
You have 100-foot trigger mines spread out over a football field. What are the odds that you actually step on one?
1 in 33.
I played Minesweeper and it's less.
Well, I can't prove that wrong, so. Yeah, good. Man. Good show, not great show. I wish it were
Great
a great
show.
show. Yeah, you're a lot more on board with it than I was. Tyler's 20-year plan, what does that even mean? Well, I don't know.
It wasn't a 20-year plan.
It was
just
20
It
years.
was a plan that took time. That he
And
He
yet,
didn't say, "I'm going to do this 20 years from today."
True.
I'm going to go back
it took him 20 years to
and
find.
light the beacon.
Yeah, it took him 20 years to find 100 12-year-olds. Essentially.
Well, they weren't ready to walk.
Yeah, it takes time. He's got to grow his army.
Oh, at the birthing center, that was him, right? With the
yeah,
chick?
he's Dan.
Yeah.
Who walks in? Yes, Tyler is the Dan who walks
Was that
in.
his kid?
No.
Okay. Was that
'cause
Alex?
Jeevan makes the joke and he goes, well, I guess he's not the father. Because, it's like a 12-year-old boy walking in.
Was that kid Alex?
No, because Alex would have been 18 at that point. I
Was
think
that kid Cody?
No, Cody's like 14.
No, they were like 18.
No, Cody was like
No,
14, 15.
because
Cody
Kirsten goes,
Cody was the
Kirsten goes, a mom to raise him? He's 18. He's raised himself.
to Cody? No.
The
Cody-
guy at the start.
Cody is very, very young.
And then
Oh,
he's-
yeah. Does she say something like that when they're on the dock?
When he's going down the water slide, yeah.
Yeah, she's like, oh, yeah, like 17. He's raised himself or something like that. And it's like, and how old did you say you were? And he's like, I didn't. Like, yeah, you may be right on that one. Man, there's a lot of footage here. This is going to be like probably the most edit-heavy thing I've ever had to do. That, or it's just going to be an hour and 10 minutes of us just ranting about the show, because I don't think there's that much fat to trim.
A little from column A, a little from column B.